New York, winter 2042. I had just landed at the airport ready to close the biggest deal of my career when my phone rang. My mother's voice was shaking. "Ethan, your brother, he's dying. The hospital needs $7 million right now." I wired the money. I thought I was saving his life. But the first one to realize the truth wasn't me. It was Daniel, the man I love, and his words cut deeper than the call. "Clara, this isn't an emergency, it's a trap." Asterisk. New York shines in steel and glass, and my family's name, the Fairmonts, is etched right into that skyline. We run one of the largest shipping empires on the East Coast. Our name appears in business magazines, charity galas, and every boardroom that smells of polished oak and old money. But inside the family, it was all smoke and mirrors. My brother Ethan was the golden child. He failed out of college, racked up gambling debts, and still got handed a yacht for his birthday. Me, Clara Fairmont, top of my finance class, first in my firm to land a multi-million-dollar account, and all I got from my father was a distracted nod, like my success was just background noise. My father, Richard Fairmont, once told me to my face, "You were born to follow, Clara, to stay quiet. Ethan will lead this family." Those words stuck like a knife. The only person who saw me differently was my grandfather, Miles Fairmont. He built this empire from nothing, and he never let me forget. Wealth means nothing without honor. Never hand over your trust blindly, Clara, not even to your own blood. And he was right. Years ago, my father tricked me into handing over money during what he called a family emergency. Half my savings disappeared overnight. That's when I made a promise, never again. I built a system of safeguards, a decoy account stocked with millions just convincing enough to look real, a fake security code for when someone tried to force my hand, and automatic alerts that went straight to Nadia, my personal attorney. Daniel, my boyfriend, the one person outside the family I trusted, knew about it. He wasn't just my partner, he was a journalist. And sometimes the truth was his weapon. One night, he looked at me across the dinner table and said, "You don't just build walls, Clara. You build traps. And one day, someone's going to walk right into one." At the time, I laughed. I didn't know how soon he would be right. Preparation doesn't look glamorous. It looks like long nights at my apartment in Manhattan, hunched over spreadsheets while the rest of the city glows outside my window. Every dollar I earned, every investment I made, it all flowed through a structure I designed myself. The real reserves sat inside a layered network of LLCs in my name, insured and invisible. The decoy account carried just enough weight to look convincing if anyone tried to force my hand, and hidden deep in the system were trip wires, thresholds that once crossed would automatically send evidence to regulators. I wasn't just protecting money, I was building a weapon. Daniel didn't like it at first. He leaned against the doorway one night, watching me code alerts into my system. "Clara," he said, "normal families don't work like this." I looked up at him. "Normal families don't steal from their own children." His jaw tightened. He crossed the room and set his hands on my shoulders. "Then promise me something. Promise me you'll use this not just to survive them, but to beat them." I nodded. But in my chest, survival still felt like the best I could hope for, until that night in early December when a strange email slipped through my alerts, an attempted login from my father's office, blocked before it could go further. Daniel read over my shoulder. "You see, they're circling already." I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was a false alarm. But the truth was heavier than I wanted to admit. The net I'd built was already pulling tight. And if they were willing to test the lock, they were willing to break the door. The morning I left for Chicago, the air felt different, like freedom was finally close. This deal wasn't just business. It was proof I could stand outside the Fairmont shadow and shine on my own. I was at the gate, laptop open, rehearsing my pitch one last time when my phone lit up. "Mom, I almost ignored it. She never called unless something was wrong. I swiped. Her voice cracked through the line. Clara, it's Ethan. He collapsed. The doctors, they won't even run the scans until we pay. They need $7 million now. My stomach dropped. My brother and I had our battles, but he was still blood. My heart raced. I stood up so fast my laptop almost hit the floor. Which hospital? I'll come right. Another voice cut in, my father, sharp, urgent. Don't waste time, Clara. Just send the money. I'll give you the code you need. Now. The words slammed into me. It was the same tone he used years ago, the night he drained my savings. I froze, memories colliding with panic. Beside me, Daniel leaned forward. He had been watching my face pale. What is it? He whispered. I covered the phone and muttered, Ethan, emergency. Dad says. Daniel's eyes hardened instantly. No hospital asks for money like that. Clara, listen to me. This isn't an emergency. It's a setup. But my father's voice pressed harder through the speaker. Clara, give me the access code. If you love your brother, do IT. Tears burned behind my eyes. My thumb hovered over the banking app. For 1 second, I almost gave him everything. Then August's words echoed in my head. Never hand over your trust blindly, not even to your own blood. My hand trembled, but I typed the string of numbers, the decoy code. Funds began to drain, millions vanishing into the net I had prepared. Daniel's hand closed over mine. You didn't give him the real key, did you? I shook my head, breath ragged. No, I gave him the tripwire. The cab ride back to Manhattan blurred past in streaks of winter light. My phone buzzed with transfer alerts, red notifications stacking like falling dominoes. 7 million gone. My chest clenched with fear, but Daniel's words repeated like a warning siren. This isn't an emergency, it's a setup. When I finally pulled into my grandfather's townhouse, I braced myself for tragedy, maybe an ambulance, a crowd, anything. Instead, the door opened. And there he was, Miles Fairmont, upright, calm, reading glasses low on his nose, the morning paper tucked under his arm. Clara, his brow furrowed. Why aren't you in Chicago? You're supposed to be presenting today. I nearly collapsed on the steps. Grandpa, Dad called. He said you fell, that you were in the hospital. His eyes darkened. He set the paper aside and ushered me inside. He asked me to play along, he admitted quietly, said it would keep peace in the family, but I refused. The words hit harder than the cold outside. My knees shook as I dropped into the old leather armchair I'd curled up in as a child. They used you, I whispered, my voice breaking. They tried to weaponize the only bond I still trusted. Daniel stepped in from behind me, voice steady but sharp. And they thought you'd fold. They thought you'd give them everything. I opened my laptop with trembling hands. Across the screen, my system lit up like a battlefield. Funds siphoned into shell accounts, transfers routed through paper companies. Look at this, I said, pointing to the cascading alerts. They think they drained me dry. What they really did was sign their own confession. Grandpa Miles leaned over my shoulder, eyes narrowing at the scrolling transactions. He thinks he's clever, he murmured. I snapped the laptop shut. No, he thinks I'm still the daughter who would cry and beg for scraps, but I'm not that girl anymore. Daniel looked at me, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. So, what do we do now? I met his gaze, steady for the first time all morning. We don't fight them with tears. We fight them with the truth. Every dollar they touched is now evidence, and I'm going to make sure it burns them. The study in my grandfather's townhouse turned into a war room. Boxes of ledgers lined the floor, stacks of contracts yellowed with age, and my laptop glowed with fresh alerts, each one a trail my father thought would vanish into the dark. Daniel paced behind me, phone in hand. I've got sources on Wall Street who can sniff out these shell companies in a heartbeat. But Clara, if I pull them in, this story won't stay private. I didn't even look up. Good. Let the light in. They've survived this long because everything stayed hidden. Nadia arrived not long after, her briefcase already open before she sat down. These aren't just sloppy transfers. she said, scanning the screen. "This is fraud, money laundering, breach of fiduciary duty. If we package this right, we can hit them from every angle." Grandpa Miles set his coffee down, his voice steady. "You'll have to decide how far you want to take this, Clara. Do you want to expose them or end them?" The question hung heavy in the air. For the first time, I didn't hesitate. "I'm done surviving them. I'm going to dismantle them." Daniel leaned in, voice low. "Then we need evidence they can't spin. Hard copies, timestamps, witnesses, and Clara, once this starts, there's no turning back." I slid a folder across the table. Inside were screenshots, flagged alerts, and a chain of emails Ethan had carelessly left tied to the companies. They already pulled the trigger. All I'm doing now is following the bullet back to them. Nadia's pen scratched across the first draft of an injunction. "We'll file tonight. Suspicious activity reports, preservation orders, subpoenas. By the time Richard realizes what's happening, regulators will already be at his door." Daniel smiled faintly, though his eyes carried the same fire as mine. "You're not just springing the trap, Clara. You're rewriting the story." And as I hit send on the first packet of flagged transactions, straight to the financial crimes unit, I felt the fear in my chest harden into something sharper. This wasn't defense anymore. It was attack. The boardroom at Fairmont Shipping gleamed with polished mahogany, crystal water glasses, and the smell of old power. Richard sat at the head of the table, smiling like a king untouchable on his throne. Ethan lounged beside him, smirking as if the empire had already been secured in his hands. "Clara," Richard drawled, his voice smooth as glass, "you should have stayed in Chicago. The family doesn't need your interference." I slid a folder across the table, the weight of it cutting through the silence. Inside, flagged transfers, shell company registrations, inflated invoices, all linked directly to them. "This isn't interference," I said evenly. "This is evidence." Richard's jaw twitched, but he forced a laugh. "Do you really think a few sloppy spreadsheets can undo me?" Daniel stood at the back of the room, his press badge clipped to his jacket. "No, Richard, but subpoenas can, and she's already filed them." The doors burst open. 2 federal agents stepped in, badges raised. Behind them came state investigators carrying preservation orders. Ethan bolted upright, face draining of color. "Wait, I didn't know it would go this far. I only signed what Dad told me." Richard's fist slammed against the table, eyes burning with fury. "Coward!" Then he turned on me, his voice sharp, venomous. "I did this for the Empire, to protect it, and you destroy us just to prove you're better than him." I rose to my feet, steady now in a way I'd never been as his daughter. "No, I'm saving it, because without integrity, this empire is already rotten." The agents moved in, seizing Richard's phone, Ethan's laptop, entire stacks of records. The boardroom, once a stage for my father's control, now smelled of fear and paperwork. As Richard was led out, he hissed over his shoulder, "You don't belong here, Clara. You're out of place." I met his glare with a calm I'd been waiting my entire life to feel. "No, Dad. For the first time, I'm exactly where I belong." Weeks later, the dust had settled, but not quietly. Richard faced multiple indictments: fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. His name, once whispered with respect in boardrooms, now headlined scandal columns. Ethan, cornered and desperate, confessed to fueling the shell companies with gambling debts. In exchange for cooperation, he was sent to treatment, his smirk replaced by shame. The board convened under emergency orders. By the clause my grandfather Miles had written decades ago, dishonesty voids control, Richard was stripped of his seat. And for the first time, the gavel fell to me. Clara Fairmont, interim CEO. It wasn't a coronation. There were no champagne toasts or flashing cameras. It was heavier than that: contracts to renegotiate, employees to reassure, debts to untangle. But it was mine. The first thing I did was restore trust. I directed the recovered funds to pay back wages. Then I created a scholarship program for employees' children, naming it after my grandfather, Miles. And I reinstated staff my father had fired for refusing to lie on the books. One night, we opened the books publicly, right there on the rooftop of our flagship building. Employees gathered around as the skyline burned with light, and for the first time, Fairmont shipping looked honest. Later, I stood with my grandfather and Daniel at my side. Miles looked out over the city, his voice rough with both pride and regret. My mistake was thinking loyalty could excuse corruption, but you've proven legacy isn't inherited, it's earned. Daniel slipped his hand into mine, his voice steady, soft enough for only me to hear. You didn't just save the company, Clara. You rewrote the story of this family. I looked at the lights stretching across the harbor, ships gliding steady into the dark. They thought they took everything from me, I whispered. But all they really did was build the proof I needed to bring them down. The empire no longer belonged to the man who corrupted it or the brother who squandered it. It belonged to me and to the truth.